Okay, so 2K16 and 2K17 conversions. We're going to do both in a single video for 2K16 and 2K17 conversions because the processes are the exact same except for one additional little step for 2K16 as opposed to 2K17, and I'll make sure to highlight that. But even though the process is the same, I'm going to make sure I do a full conversion, an example of a full conversion for both games so that you can see the whole process, and it makes it as clear as possible. So we're going to start out with a 2K16 conversion, and in this little folder I have for the tutorial, I've got the files already for the player I want to convert from 2K16, and wherever those files are, you'll need the face and PNG archive, and you'll want to click on the PNG archive of that player. Make sure that the list is sorted in descending order by size again, and look for the model at the top of that list. Click on that, and then control click the hihead.SCNE file. Drag those into wherever you have these files stored here. And then in my other folder here, I've got the main kit directory, or in my other window here, I have the main kit directory open, and I'm going to drag this model file that I just dragged in. I'm going to drag it into the main kit directory, copy it in, and I'm going to find that file where I just dragged it in, rename it to NBA2KXX.model, all lowercase, and I'm going to run the exe for the first time. And as you can see, you need to select a game you're converting from, and then you will click the convert player button right here. Don't worry about this second button for now. We'll be taking care of that later. But the first time you open up the exe, you're clicking a game, and then you're clicking convert to player. But if you notice, for NBA 2K16 and NBA 2K17, there's one more set of choices you have to click on. And before we do anything, so we know we're converting from NBA 2K16, but we need to go to Blender real quick to check some info and to ensure whether we need to click the first or second option here. So I'm going to minimize here. I'm going to go into Blender. And I'm going to first, I'm going to make sure, since 2K16 had a separate an older version of the exporter, I'm going to make sure I have that, or I guess I do already have it enabled right now. Okay. Just wanted to make sure, because if I tried to do it with the current importer, exporter, it wouldn't work. So desktop. Okay, so here's where I drag those files in. Let's import the model. And the way we're going to tell the information that we need is by going into edit mode. And when you first go into edit mode, the entire model should be selected. And then if you go to this data panel over here and look at the vertex groups, and look, well, first you can just look at the model and you can say, oh, does he have 3D hair? Yes. But if he does have 3D hair, you'll see after the right eyelash's shape, which this basically marks the end of the vertex groups for the 3D body. And then after that, anything else is going to be like 3D hair, 3D goggles, masks, facial hair, etc. And so the key thing we need to do here is, if we recognize, okay, he has 3D hair, there it is right here, there's a vertex group, make sure you deselect that. And once you deselect that, then whatever you have selected and whatever displays in the top right of the window here in Blender where it says verts, whatever that number is, that's the information you need for the tool. So if you look up here, it says 15824. That is the number of verts. And if we go back into the tool, we will see those are the two options, and we found that it was the second one. We'll click Convert Player, and in the console you should see some confirmation here. Player converted. Update the hihead.SCNE file. So we'll exit, and at this point go into the converted folder first, and these are the new files generated by the tool. Click on the hihead.SCNE file that was generated by the tool, minimize, and then go to instead now the resources folder and go to the scene templates folder, and then click the game that you're converting from, and click on this 2K16 _ converted.scene file, and then you can get them in like a split view here, so it's a little easier. And you will see that this file on the left, the 2K16 converted.scene file, as the name of the folder implies, it's basically a template to where we're going to go in and copy a few sections from this template file here and paste them over the same sections in the converted scene file, hihead.SCNE file. And the first of those is, if you go down to the vertex format, if you go all the way down to the bottom, this vertex format section here, highlight that in the converted scene file, and then highlight it in the template scene file over here. Control C to copy, and then paste it over in the converted scene file. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is this prim section up here. Okay. So from where it says prim all the way down to here, highlight that, and then go into the template file, do the same until you see the last entry here. Copy that, paste over it in the converted scene file, and then save. Okay, so now we're done with this 2K16 converted.scene file, and if the player I'm converting did not have 3D hair, we wouldn't need to do this additional step here, because that scene file, the template scene file, it has the correct prim section, basically with it's the vertex groups for a player that just has the 3D body and who doesn't have any facial hair or hair. So all we need to do now is, so if Steve Nash, if he didn't have any hair, we'd be good, but we need to go into the original 2K16 scene file just to get in the material in the prim section of the file, just to add the hair part. And again, we can do that split view, so if we go to the top, if you highlight the last line of the material section in the converted file, and then the last two of the original scene file, copy and paste that over. Do the same for the prim section. Find this is the converted file. And then this last part here where it says hair shader, and the little bracket and comma above it, highlight that and copy it. And then it's important where you paste it. Where you want to paste it is directly after this eyelashes shader entry here. So right on the last line of that, press enter to enter a new line, and then highlight that line and paste it in this hair entry here. So it's after the eyelashes shader and before this little hidden shader group. So this is the order it should look like, or it should be. That is if you have hair or facial hair that you need to account for, like we do here with Steve Nash. Now we're good to go. We can save it. We can exit. And now for the first time we'll get to load the player, converted player, in Blender. And to do so, I'm gonna disable this 2K16 old importer tool, since the player's converted. Now it's going to be read like a 2K20 file. So disable that, and then I have the new Blender script in here also. So the NBA 2K tools. Okay, so this is the current version of it that I recently released the updated version of. Okay, so I already have it, or no, I need to get the path for the converted folder and then the hihead.SCNE file in that folder. So converted hihead.SCNE, import. If you notice in the top right, you see an object named 2K20 above hihead, and that is the bass player's model. I have him imported, and I renamed the object from hihead to 2K20, and that's important for later on that you have that in there as well. But when you first load them up in Blender, make sure that there's no crazy stuff happening. It won't take you long to find out if there is. I don't see any crazy geometry happening. It looks like everything's correct. So I'm gonna go into edit mode, and I'm going to have this UV editor. I'm gonna have it in view here, and I'm gonna go, provided that you have the Blender add-on enabled that I showed you how to do that in this second video. You're gonna look for the menu entry for that Blender add-on where it says NBA 2K20 CF conversion tool, and then you're going to click on the first option in the pop-up menu there, and you should see in the bottom here your UVs will move a little bit. Okay. And you will want to make sure that first the export location needs to be your main kit directory, the 2K20 CF convert kit, and then resources internal. That's where you want your export path to be. We're going to export him. Okay. So with that being done, now you can go back to where you imported from the converted folder, and then within that you should see another folder called the edited folder. That's now going to be your export path, and now we're going to do the majority of the Blender work here before we export there. Now we will begin with making a series of edits that will prepare the player for use in 2K20, and we'll be utilizing both the Blender add-on that was included with the tool that we installed in the second video, as well as the keyboard shortcut that we set up. Very briefly, I want to just point something out before I get started with the bulk of the work here in Blender. You may not know exactly all the techniques and methods that I'm using, but you can definitely follow along by copying what I do and achieve the same result. And if I stop to explain less, I think it makes things go a lot more smoothly and it's a lot more easy to follow. So yeah, at this point of the tutorial, just do your best to follow along with what you see. I may not have an explanation for every single thing I do, but to get started here, I'm going to go to wireframe view. We're in edit mode, and the entire model should be selected. So I'm going to go to the bottom vertex group that reads face shader duplicate 3 model here. I'm going to deselect that, and I'm going to hit H to hide everything that's selected. So we're basically just isolating the bottom group here. I'm going to select everything that's in view here of what's displayed. You see that there's a top row where it stops here, and there's just a loop or row of vertices, whatever you want to call it, at the very top. You want to zero in on that, and then the top part that you can see, and have your mouse not over one of those vertices but over an edge in between those vertices. And we're going to utilize that shortcut we made by hitting Alt Shift and right clicking on that edge. It'll deselect that entire row, the top. We're going to hit automation number 1 button here. And now right click to select some vertice that is clearly on like the top of his head or his forehead, and we're going to use a selection method in Blender that makes an automatic selection by hitting Control L. And this, at this point right here, is what I was referring to as the one tiny difference between 2K16 and 2K17 conversions. So if we were doing a 2K17 conversion, we would be able to just move on at this point, but this automatic selection that we made, it didn't get everything selected that we want. If we were doing a 2K17 conversion, the 2K17 model would have automatically made this selection here. It would look like that. But in 2K16, for some reason, it only selects that much. This back part is not in the selection like we need it to be. So that is the one difference. You just get out the circle select tool and just left click and drag over the following areas here to where you get that selection. And so that's the difference right there. Everything else is the exact same in Blender. So we are now going to press automation number 2. If you see that the bottom half, and there's a gap between the two parts of the head shape, make sure that's deselected if you see that selected at all. And now we are all about lining up the eyes of the selected part of the model versus the non-selected part. So selected is the head and eyes and everything of the converted player, and what's not selected, the selected part is the highlighted yellow part, and then the black part that isn't selected. The non-selected part is the head and eyes of the bass player, and we want to just move forward everything that's selected here so that the eyes line up as best we can with the bass player. So, but first, again, I'll have this selected real quick. We're essentially connecting these two halves of the head shape. And so before we move for the eyes and try to line those up, it does help us later if we rotate the head a little bit. And usually, if it makes sure that this group is deselected again, if you rotate along the x-axis and rotate maybe -3 or 4 degrees, it usually gets the job done and it lines up a lot better, as you can see now. And once we've lined it up by rotating it, now we're just going to shift all our focus onto the eyes. So I'm going to translate it along the z-axis a little bit, translate it along the y-axis, and try to line it up the best I can. Maybe move it a little bit more. Centered. Okay, so that looks about centered. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just try to get it as centered as you can without being too obsessive about it. And so now if we select it again, we'll see that it's lined up better and we have the eyes lined up. We rotated the top of the head to where when we connect it later, these two portions, the gap between them looks a lot cleaner, and it's a smaller gap and the edges of each look lined up better. That's what we did first, and then second, the eyes look centered. And so if you again deselect this group here, the bottom part, now we're going to hit the automation number 3 button. And at this point, we're going to be doing a little bit of rotating and translating of this selected part as well. But now what we're working on is we have the bottom part isolated, this face shader duplicate 3 model group. And so we're in edit mode, so we can't see the rest of it that we're trying to line up with. But if you go out of edit mode, you can see, okay, this is the top part we have selected. We're trying to line this up with this top part. So you can just tab in and out of edit mode to kind of refer to the top part, and it'll involve a little bit of rotating, a little bit of moving it. So I'm going to rotate it a few degrees maybe along the x-axis, maybe like 2 degrees, and then see where we're at. I'm going to move it up and forward. Okay, maybe a little more forward. Okay, and it looks like this bottom part, and maybe we could make it a little bit wider here. This edge, it looks like it's a little thinner here. So if I scale along the y-axis and scale it up a little bit, that should help line it up a little bit better. And it looks to be matching a little better, but I'm just going to move it forward a little bit more too. But it looks like scaling it up helped because it looked a little thinner. It looked like the edges weren't straight on. So made it larger, moved it up, and so if we go back to edit mode, I'm gonna go to side view by pressing 3, and then I'm gonna hit Shift 4 to change the view a little bit. And this is just for the purposes of what the tool is gonna do, solely for that. So whatever operation it's going to do, we're going to click automation number 4, and we went to side view and then Shift 4 once, just to line something up for the tool to work on it. So once we press that, automation number 4, and you should see just the bottom and top edges of the two parts of the head shape. And so you want to go back, or you want to zoom in to the back of the neck here, and if you look, you can kind of tell where the center point is for the top mesh here, or for the top part of the head shape here. There's a line right here for the center, and then over here, a little to the left, that's kind of the halfway mark. If you go in and you take into account kind of the halfway point here, for the top part of the head shape, the middle is here. I'm going to go Shift, right click to deselect the edge to the right of that middle point, and then do the same thing for the bottom half. So this is the center here, the edge just to the right of that. And so we deselected 2 edges. We're going to hit Control E, and then we're going to go down to where it says Bridge Edge Loops. Click on that. And then, so you'll see that it forms faces for all the other edges and connects this except for those 2 edges that we left out. And so after that, you want to right click on the bottom edge, Shift, right click on the top edge to have just these 2 edges selected. Hit Control E again, and then Bridge Edge Loops again. And with that being done, you can hit the automation number 5 button. And if you zoom out, you'll see something different is selected. That doesn't matter. We are now done with this part of the Blender edits, and we can go back to this mesh menu in edit mode, and then the NBA2K20 CF conversion tool. Go to the second and third options and click both of those prior to exporting the model like we usually would. So we click the second and third options. Now we can go back to object mode and we can export this model. It'll go to the edited folder. Okay, it's done now. I'm going to go back to the window that I have the tool directory open. I'm going to go back to the main kit directory and double click this exe again. And now don't worry about anything up here anymore. Don't worry about selecting a game or a vertex count or anything. We're only going to just come in, click this second button, and once you see done in the console here, click exit and close. And now we're going to repeat what we did earlier on, where we opened up one of the scene template files, except this is going to be, there's 2 separate ones. So when we first ran the tool and picked the game and the vertex count and all that, it was imported into Blender from the converted folder, and then now we just operate it again on the player, and we're going to go back into Blender and import the updated version from the edited folder. And so that's when we had this one we're going to open up now, and it's the same thing, except at this point all you need to worry about is copying the prim section. So I want to make sure everything's okay. So we have on the left here, we have I have opened the scene file in the edited folder. That's the one we want to change. And then I have the scene template file from the resources folder. And so I'm going to go down to the bottom and then scroll up to find the prim section. I'm going to highlight that, copy and paste it over. Copy. Paste over here. Now there is one important thing, and it applies the same just like earlier, where I noted that these scene template files do not have the 3D hair accounted for. So we're going to paste over this section from the scene template, and then we're going to want to go back over, and so paste over here. So we have everything we need for this part of the process, except this scene template accounts for only the player's body, not some players that have 3D hair, facial hair, or anything else additionally with the model. So we have everything we need, but in this prim section we need to go in again just like we did earlier, and we need to go to the original scene file from 2K16, go to the prim section, and copy this hair shader part again, like so. Copy. Okay, we got that copied. We can exit now. Okay. So this is the scene file we were just working with, and again, right after the eyelashes shader group, we're going to create a new line, highlight that line, paste the hair group in from the old scene file. With that being done, we're now good to save, go into Blender and import it. And if you don't want to start a new window or delete the model that we already have in Blender, what you can do is, just to have it for reference later, just to have it in here, you can just change the name to converted, so you know that that is the version of the model from the previous step, and you can hide it, and then we can go and export the newest version from the edited folder here. And it is important, in fact it is required, that you, when you import from the edited folder here, and the second time, that you also import the model skeleton by checking that box. Okay, so what you can do is, the skeleton is kind of in the way. One way to just kind of get it out of sight and out of mind is to hide it, like so, and then drag this little icon over where it says hihead, and then it says drop to set parent. Just drag it over the hihead, and then just release the mouse, and it'll just parent it to this hihead object. Basically, it just gets it out of the way. At this point, we have this is the updated version of the player. This is with everything connected. We've connected the two parts of the head shape. We've the add-on has done a bunch of other stuff to get rid of the parts and to hide the parts of the base player that we don't want to see in the game. And now there are two things that we're going to do, two more times we're going to utilize the add-on. The first is by going into edit mode, and If you go into edit mode and you have the UV image editor, if you have another window of that in view here, you want to have that, and you want to go to this option right here where there's a mouse and then a little cube and a couple dots, and it says keep UV in edit mode, mesh selection in sync. Just click that button here and then scroll up until you see the blend head shape group and deselect that, and we're going to be hiding everything that's selected here. So hide, and so what you will see now, if you zoom in, the reason we're here is this for whatever reason, this UV map, the UV coordinates, everything looks perfectly fine except there's like 11 vertices. For some reason the UV coordinates get messed up, and for that we have something that can be automated with the add-on to save you the hassle of trying to fix that yourself. So if you go in, and as we clicked over here, the selections that we're making up here and down here are going to be in sync now. So if you hit Control-1 to go to the front view here and select that middle, select right in the middle, the vertex there, and then if you go and select the 5 vertices to the right of that and the 5 vertices to the left of that middle one, and you'll see all of these vertices that look out of place here, these coordinates, you should see them all be highlighted. So I've got 11 vertices highlighted. This whole thing here that looks out of whack, it's all orange to indicate that it's selected. And if we press automation number 6, let me zoom out a little bit, it should move all those coordinates back down where they should be. This is what it's supposed to look like at the end. So automation number 6, we press that, and then finally, to wrap up our use of the add-on, we can close this UV image editor window now. We can zoom out a little bit, and if you press 7, you'll get a good view, or just whatever view you want. It doesn't matter. This is just so you can see the work that the add-on is doing. Pay attention to this shoulder and neck area here. If you make sure in object mode and click automation number 7 here, it may take a little bit, but if you keep your eyes on, like I said, the shoulder and neck area, it should line them up a lot better and match up the two parts of the mesh where there was a big gap. And so as you can see, the gap is mostly closed. It's not perfect, but the main goal was to, at the very least, you don't have a gap showing, a glaring gap for when you open up the player and like you see through the side of his jersey, or like see like along the chest or the traps here. So now with that being done, there's one more bit of work that we need to do ourselves in Blender, and that is as follows. We're going to go into sculpt mode, and now it's all about smoothing out. You can tell where we connected those two parts of the head shape. Like, it's pretty obvious. You see that it kind of sticks out, and that's pretty much what we're doing here. Is we're going in with the sculpt mode, and when you go into sculpt mode after running the Blender add-on, all the sculpt settings should all be set up to what you want. Like, I have them all set up to use the sculpt brush that we need and at the correct strength and all that. So it should all be, and it should be it should have this group isolated, the head shape. So all you need to do is just go into sculpt mode and start sculpting it. And so if we just go in, just kind of smooth out this group where it's pretty clear that the two parts were connected. And then if you go to the back of the neck here, it looks a little awkward back there, so I'm going to smooth that out. Kind of extend a little bit of that area of the back of the neck to where it looks more realistic. And go to the front, smooth it out a little bit. Okay. So now that we've smoothed it out a little bit, it should look more presentable. You don't have to get it to be perfect, because after this you can do all the edits that you want and treat it like a 2K20 file, but you can see that we smoothed it out a little bit, made it look a little more realistic, and at this point it is now ready to be looked at in game. So we're going to export what we have here, and now we're going to export. So there's the converted folder that we started in, and then within that there's the edited folder, and now our export path, we exported to the edited folder last. Now we're exporting from the edited folder, and there's one more folder in there that's called the final folder. That's our export path. I hope that's not confusing, but this last bit of work in Blender that we did, we imported from the edited folder. We're exporting to the final folder. Okay, so converted, edited, final. And so now at this point, wherever I have my files set aside, so I have them here, wherever you originally store your files, what you can do is you can create a new folder and call it the completed folder. Doesn't have to be named that, it's just what I name it. But if you drag in a copy of these PNG and face archives, the original ones, they'll be in there, and we can now do what we need to do with them. And then if we go to this final folder, we can drag in, this is what we just exported from Blender. We can drag that into there, and then the scene file, the up-to-date scene file here from the edited folder, drag that in there. So now if we go to our completed folder, we've got the newest files that we've modified, and then we have, these are the face and PNG archives as they were. And so what we can do is, in this completed folder, the face and PNG archives that you have, we're getting it ready to drag these PNG archives into the game, into the modded folder. So a little more here. The only thing that you want to keep at this point, if you go into the 7-zip archive for the PNG archive and you hit Control A to select all, if your player has hair of some sort, that's the only files that you won't be deleting. So if you go to hair color, hair tangent, the DDS textures, and then if you go to hair color, hair tangent for their text files, the TXTR files. So at this point, if Steve Nash didn't have hair, I would literally be deleting all his files in his original archive. But since he has hair with his model, we're going to delete everything but the hair files, the texture files. And you also want to locate wherever you have your 2K20 base player stored, and you're going to open up their PNG archive. We're going to drag in, this is the original 2K20 base players PNG archive, and this is the one we're working on right now. You want to grab two things. You want to grab the math nodes file, whatever says hihead.something.math nodes. Click on that to highlight it, and then control click the appearance info file here. Drag those both in to the new archive here that we're setting up, and then go back to the folder. Where you go back to your completed folder here, and these two files that we have here, the hihead.SCNE and the hihead.model, we're going to drag those over. This is what the PNG archive will look like when it's converted. And now we're going to go to the face archive to make some changes. So we're going to go back to completed face archive here, and then we're going to be using the face archive of the bass player just for reference. Just you'll see here in a second what I mean. Open up just the face color and face wrinkle color .txtr files from both the completed face archive and the bass player's face archive. Same two files, and we're going to deal with those first. So these, the first two here are the files from the completed. These are the old face files from the converted player, and these are the new ones from the bass player. And so what we want from these files, from these 2K20 files, is we want everything except for, we want to keep the file names, we want to keep the same textures from the face files from 2K16, but we want to update these files here, the text files. So we want to, like where it says binary and then some file.dds, we're not going to change that, but we are going to change, we're going to copy over everything else pretty much. So from where it says width all the way down to header size, copy that. For the face color one, and where it says MIPS and format, highlight that, overwrite that, and paste in the stuff from the 2K20 file. And now where you see scale and offset, highlight the line where it says offset, and then hit Control Shift and the up arrow, and it will move it up a line to where it was scale, then the next line was offset, and it switched them. And now rename offset to min, M-I-N, scale to max, M-A-X. Highlight these two lines, cut them by hitting Control X, and then go over the lines where it says the same two things, min and max, up here, and paste them over like so. Hit save. You can exit out of the face color files. Now do the exact same thing for the face wrinkle color files. Control C to copy everything but this last part here. Back over here, and we're going to overwrite these these 3 lines here: MIPS format, textile usage. Control V. Okay, so we got that copied over. Same exact thing. Highlight the line that says offset. Control Shift up arrow to switch the place of the 2 lines. Change offset to min. Change scale to max. Highlight them, cut them with Control X, paste them over the min and max lines up here with Control V, like so, and then save. And now we can exit out of both of these. So first we're gonna exit out of Notepad altogether. Make sure you save those files, exit out, and you should be prompted to confirm changes to the 2 files that we just edited here. Make sure you hit OK for both. So you should see those 2 files have changed. Now we're going to open up the other 4 .txtr files, and we're going to make edits to those. But now it's much simpler. The reason why I split them up, we have to make edits to all 6 of these files here, the .txtr, but you have to do something extra in the face wrinkle color and face color files. That's why I just had them in separate windows, so it wasn't like 10 files open at once and it wasn't confusing. So we have all those open now. We're just opening these files from the completed face archive now. Now we're not worried about this bass player's face archive anymore. We got what we need from it. And now you're just going to go to each file that you have open in Notepad now. You're just going to go to the line where it says format, highlight it, delete it for each one of these files. Like so. And then at the end, hit Control Shift S to save all. And that's all you're doing with these files. So you should see they'll be the exact same, except you don't see a line that says, they'll be the exact same except you won't see a line that says format anymore. Exit out, hit OK 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Okay. Now we can go ahead and drag these completed archives here, drag them into the modded folder. And we'll go in, let's load them up. And so, you will notice, the first thing you'll notice, okay, the player did convert over, great. But you will see that the hair is going to, regardless of what it's supposed to be in 2K16 and 17, it's going to appear as like gray or whitish hair. And I think that just has to do with how the game renders the hair files, like on the game side. So with these hair files, you actually have to go in, and you can restore the original hair color or close to it. You actually need to go in to, go back to the PNG archive. I'm going to open up it in the modded folder now where we have it. Modded folder, PNG0358, that's where the hair files are. So you need to go into hair color, open that up in Photoshop or whatever editor that you prefer. And yeah, I don't know why. The textures themselves, they just they're all like lighter and like closer to gray in 2K16 and 17. So you can add a couple adjustment layers. Hue saturation. First, bring the lightness down quite a bit to what it would, something around what it would be, and then you can play with the hue if you want to get, maybe turn a little bit up so you can see the hue a little more. But mess with the hue if you want it closer to like a blonde, red, brown, you know, more dark color. So somewhere around here is what I'm going to shoot for. Bring the saturation down a little bit. And so right about here, that's what I'm gonna roll with. First, just save it in Photoshop, and it's gonna be in some random like obscure temporary location in your computer, like this. But once you've saved it, you can hit Control-Shift-S to save as, and you can actually see the file wherever the heck it is, and you can drag that file into the updated file into your into 7-zip. So that's one way to do it. It doesn't really matter though if you want to drag a file out to your desktop, edit it and drag it over, then whatever floats your boat. But so I've made my changes. Now we're going to take a look here, and it should at least look, it may not be exactly what it's supposed to look like, but I think you get the idea that, yeah, maybe I would go and mess with it some more, make it a little lighter, more like brown looking, but it's at least, it looks like an NBA player's hair color, and it's not completely gray, whitish. So now the hair looks appropriate at least, and the only thing left to do here is to, as you can tell, his skin is not, the skin tone of his face does not quite match that of his body, and we can go in to the appearance info. We can find the original appearance info from 2K16, and you can't just drag it in, unfortunately, but you can look at the values in the original one and compare it to what you see in the 2K20 one that we're using, because we're using, it's whatever this 2K20 base player, we're using his appearance info file, so he has a different skin tone and different maybe like eye color or whatever, but you can compare the two side by side, and you can take any values and change them by referring to the old one. So for example, the skin color, that it says 8 in the old one, we can change that to where that's appropriate. The pit hair, you can change that to blonde instead of brown. And then I think that is all that we can apply here. Iris size regular, that matches up. So that's really all we can change. There's only a few things you can change, but those are important. Things like the eye color and pit hair and skin color. So did that, click OK. Now if we check in game, he should have the appropriate skin tone, and the hair should look, there we go. Okay, now he should have the appropriate skin tone. The hair should look somewhat appropriate, and there you have him. Alright, so next up we have a 2K17 conversion, and we're looking at the main kit directory here. It still has the files in it from the 2K16 conversion, so before we get started I'm going to clear that out. So I'm going to leave the hihead.SCNE file and this hihead.model file, both of which are the 2K20 base player, because I'm going to use the same base player, but I'm going to clear out the NBA 2KXX.model file that I had in there, and then I'm also going to delete this converted folder. when you delete it, it'll automatically be regenerated by the tool when you run it, and that just clears out all the old files at once. So I'm going to go back and locate my 2K17 files, and I'm going to do the same thing I did for 2K16, which is open up the PNG archive, find the largest model file, highlight it, control click hihead.SCNE file, drag them into this folder, and then I'm going to drag this model file .2K17 model file into the kit directory and rename it to NBA 2KXX. I'm going to run the tool. I'm going to select NBA 2K17, and before I select one of these, I need to go into Blender and double check the vertex count. So let's go into Blender real quick and locate that file. Okay. And this one is easy simply because there's no 3D hair or anything, it's just this 3D body. So if I go into edit mode, I see the vertex count up here, 17,123. So that's all I need to know there. That's the first option. I'm gonna click convert. There's my confirmation. See, the new converted folder was created, and all the subfolders within it and all that. And again, just like 2K16, we're going to open up the hihead.SCNE file in the converted folder, and then open up from the resources scene templates folder, NBA 2K17 folder, this 2K17 converted.scene. And I'm going to copy from where it says eyes shader down of this prim section here, because the names of the vertex groups are different. Paste it over here. Okay. And then I'm going to go down to where it says vertex format, that section. And copy that whole section. And then I'm going to do the same for the prim section. I'm going to save, and we can now open up the model in Blender. Start a new file here. And I have it set up to where when I load up a new file or reload the default window, I have the base player's model from 2K20 already imported, and I changed the name of the object to 2K20, and I have it hidden so that when I'm doing a conversion, it's just there. You don't necessarily have to have it set up where it loads up with the factory settings. But when you do a 2K16 or 2K17 conversion and follow these tutorials, make sure that that this is imported and named 2K20 in your project. Okay. All right. So if you recall from 2K16, the first step, go to the mesh menu in edit mode where the MB2K20 CF conversion tool menu is, and that will bring up an additional menu where you can click the first option, match up UVs, and then go back to object mode. Make sure your export directory is resources internal. Export it real quick. And now we can, now that that's exported, we can change our export directory to converted, edited, the edited folder. And we can go back in edit mode. So everything will be selected. If you haven't done anything yet and you just go straight in edit mode, everything should be selected. So you want to go down to this bottom group here, the face shader duplicate 4 model, deselect that group, hide everything except for that group. Select all that's visible, Alt-Shift right click in that top row of vertices on one of the edges between them, or one of the edges between a pair of vertices, just like that. Hit automation number 1, right click to select a vertice somewhere on the top of his head, hit Control L to make an automatic selection. And I also want to highlight here, as I did in the 2K16 example, I noted where the one tiny difference is in the process for Blender between 2K16 and 2K17 conversions. The 2K16 player, for when I made this automatic selection like we just did, this isn't the exact selection, but like it's more like that, and there's this back of the neck here isn't all selected like we wanted it to be in 2K16, but in 2K17, when we do that same automatic selection method like we did, Control L, it gives us the selection we need already, and we don't need to make any additional selection with the circle select tool. But what we do need to do is we're going to hit Alt-Shift and then right click again, make sure you're in wireframe view, and right click right at the right where it intersects, where the selected part and the non-selected part intersect, this edge right here, or some edge along that row here. Alt-Shift right click like so, hit automation number 2, and now is the time to check if it would be good to rotate this top of the head a little bit. We're just selecting temporarily just so we can see the bottom half compared to the top half. So yeah, probably a couple degrees we could rotate it along the x-axis. Okay. Now that we've rotated a little bit to line it up better, Now it's all about the eyes. Lining up everything we have selected, this whole head, eyes included. This is the head of the converted player. We want to line it up with the non-selected part, with the eyes of the bass player. So I'm gonna translate along the y-axis. Along the z. Okay, not looking for perfection here, just to where it looks pretty well centered. And so there it is. We're now going to click automation number 3 once we have the rotation done and the eyes lined up. Now we were just messing with the top part of the head shape. Now we are going to be messing with the bottom part of the head shape, both of which will be connecting. So this top part of the head shape and the bottom part of the head shape, they're going to be connecting. And so we were messing with that, like I said. Now we're looking at the bottom part. And so although you can't see it because it's hidden in edit mode here, you can tab in and out to see how well it's lined up and make the adjustments as you go. So it definitely needs to be rotated quite a bit. Needs to be brought down and forward a little bit. It appears to be wider on the bottom part than the top, so I'm going to scale it along the Y. Oh wait, so it's okay, the bottom is the wider part, so we're going to scale it down along the Y. Okay, looks a little better. Gonna rotate it a little bit more as well. This is a pretty subjective part of the process. You can put as much time into it as you want. And so that looks pretty good. So now this is an important step. Go to side view by hitting 3 on the numpad, and then hit shift 4 to tilt back to the left one time. This is solely for the purpose of the tool. We're just lining something up for the tool to do when we hit this automation number 4 button here, like so. With that being done, if you zoom out, you can kind of see the center point from the back going up to the neck here, and then you can kind of see it on the top part too. This middle row of vertices vertically here. And what you want to do is, right now, all the edges from the bottom and top parts that we're trying to connect should be selected. We're going to shift and right click on the first edge to the right of the middle point of the bottom part and the top part. So along here, one edge to the right, along here, one edge to the right. We're going to hit Control E. Click on click on Bridge Edge Loops. Now right click on the bottom edge that you deselected a second ago, and then shift right click on the top edge that you deselected a second ago. Do the same thing where you go Control E, Bridge Edge Loops, and with that being done, you can hit automation number 5. The selection will change, some other stuff will have been done, but for this part of the edits in Blender, we have done what we need to do. We're going to locate that same mesh in the mesh menu and the Blender add-on menu, and we're going to hit, instead of the first option, we're going to click separately, we're going to click export the face index, the second option, and then we're going to click the third option, export vertex selection. Tab out, and we can export the model now. Alright, let's find our way back to the main kit directory with the exe, load that up again. Okay, so at this point we've already clicked the button, the first button, we've selected our game and the vertex count and all that. At this point, the second time we're running this exe for this conversion, we're going to disregard all of this top part here and the first button. All we care about is just clicking this second button right here. Wait for confirmation. At the bottom you'll see done in the console. Exit and close. And now we're going to go one folder further. We started out in this converted folder. Now we're going to go to the edited folder, where we'll see a new hihead.SCNE file and a new hihead.model file that has been operated on by the tool. Click on that. First, let me clear out everything I have in Notepad. And then we're going to go back again to the resources scene templates folder, MB2K17, and now we're opening the 2K17 edited.scene. And if you caught on, these files are named, their name corresponds to the scene file that you're using it with, so in the conversion process. So the first time we open up, we were in the main directory, main kit directory, and then we went to the converted folder in the hihead.scene file in there. We opened that, and then we opened this scene template here for the converted. And then now we're about to do the same, where we are now in the converted edited folder, and we're going to open up the scene file from there and this 2K17 edited scene template file. And this corresponds also to where we're importing. So when we go into Blender each time, when we're importing the scene file the first and second time, first we're importing the scene file from the converted folder, second we're importing from the edited folder. So 2K17 edited.scene. Now all we care about is go down to the prim section, copy that from, copy that from this template file here. Paste it over to the current prim section in this hihead.scene file from the edited folder. Okay, save it. Now we are good to open it up in Blender for the second time. Okay. And if you want to keep the file that we just exported in the first step, just change that name to converted. You can hide it so you still have it there along with your 2K20 object. And now we'll go one folder further here to the edited folder. Make sure we have the import model skeleton button checked when we import the model, and then click import. To quickly get the skeleton out of the way without deleting it, you can hide it real quick. Left click and drag it over the hihead.SCNE file and then release it. It'll parent it to the main model, and it just kind of gets it out of the way. Okay, so go into edit mode. If you don't have a UV image editor window open, go ahead and have one open for this part, and go to this button here where there's a mouse, a little cube, and a couple dots here where it says keep UV and edit mode mesh selection in sync. Click that. Everything should be selected at this point. Scroll up and find the blend head shape group. Deselect that, hit H to hide, and we've got some UV coordinates that need to be fixed real quick, and we have automation for that as well. So if you locate, hit Control 1 to go to the front view of the head shape, you find this middle point right here, this middle vertex on the very edge. Select that, right click it, and then shift right click the 5 vertices to the right of it and the 5 to the left of it, and you should see these coordinates here that look a little out of place in the bottom in the UV image editor. You should see those all be selected. So you should have 11 vertices selected. You should see all of these that look out of place should be highlighted orange. And if you go over here and click automation number 6, it will fix those coordinates for you. And then you can get rid of that UV image editor window if you want. And now we're going to run some automation from the Blender add-on for the last time for this conversion here. Hit make sure in object mode, hit automation number 7. It might take a second. If you look at the shoulder neck area, especially the gap between, you should notice that it shrinks and it fits those parts together a little better. The final thing for us to do in Blender here is to go into sculpt mode. All the settings that you need should be already set up by the tool, and you should have the head shape group isolated that you need to have isolated. And now all we need to do is we're using this flatten brush, we're just going to smooth out where we connected the 2 parts of the head shape. Alright, the back part looks better. Now I'm just going to pay attention to this front part of the neck. Okay, so we got it smoothed out to where it looks a little bit more natural now. You can't tell nearly as much where the parts of the head shape were connected, and you don't have to get too crazy with it, because once you export this model, you can then have the freedom to make any edits to it and sculpt it and do whatever you want creatively, just like you would with the 2K20 file. So this is more just getting it, you know, up to a place where it's presentable, and then after that you can take it wherever you want it. So we're done sculpting. Just compare real quick before and after. We just wanted to make the back of that neck look a little more natural, smooth it out, bring it back. Same thing for the front. Okay. So now we are going to export to the final folder, which is within the edited folder. That's our last export path here. Okay. I go back to this folder I have for the converted players files. I'm going to create a new folder. Name it whatever you want, but when I do conversions like this, I just call it completed, and it's a place to drag the updated converted files so that you can easily have access to them. And also I drag a copy of the archives, the PNG and face archives of the original, copy it into there so that we can change them and do whatever we want, knowing that it's a copy. So completed folder, I'm going to go ahead and locate the files. So we got in the final folder here, that's the model we just exported. We can drag that in, copy that in. And if we go back to the edited folder, that's the hihead scene file that we imported with last. Drag that in. And open up the PNG archive of this player. And if you saw the 2K16 portion of the video, you will recall that when we open up this PNG archive and we're clearing it out to prepare it for the modded folder, prepare it for 2K20, the only files that you would potentially keep is if your player has 3D hair of some sort and there's hair textures in here, but they're not. So you actually just select all the files, delete it. Now you have an empty archive. And at this time, we want to go ahead and locate the 2K20 base player. Open up their PNG archive real quick. And locate the hihead.mathnodes file. Click on it. Then control click the appearance info file. Drag those in. Yes. And then you can go back to the completed folder that we just set up. Drag the hihead.SCNE and the model file in from there, and that's our PNG archive. Now we want to focus on getting the face archive ready. There's still some changes to make to that. So in this other 7-zip window, I have the PNG archive for the base player. Now I'm gonna go into the face archive, and you want to locate the face color and face wrinkle color.txtr files and open those up in Notepad. And you're opening, let me clear this stuff out real quick. Try that again. Okay. So you're opening those same exact files from both the archive in the completed folder and the 2K20 base players PNG or face archive. face wrinkle color, face color. Okay. So these two are the ones we're working on. These are the reference files from the 2K20 base player. So first, go into face color, select everything from where it says the line with header size all the way up to width, copy it, select the lines that say MIPS and format, paste over, highlight the line that says offset, hit Control Shift up arrow to switch that line with the line that says scale to where the offset line is now first. Highlight where it says offset, change that to min, M-I-N, and then change the one below it to max. Now highlight those, Control X to cut those lines, highlight the lines further up where it says min max, paste over those, save. Okay, done with the face color ones. And then same kind of thing, this is the 2K20 file for the face wrinkle color. Highlight from where it says header size up to width, copy, highlight the lines where it says MIPS, format, textile usage, paste over, select or highlight the line that says offset, Control Shift up arrow, change offset to min, scale to max, highlight those two lines that we just messed with, hit Control X to cut, select min and max lines up further, paste over, save, and we're going to exit out of Notepad to make sure these changes are saved for these two files. So we got two different things came up. Make sure you hit OK for both. Okay, now we're done with the face archive from that other player. We don't need to open up any files from there, but we do need to open up the rest of these .txtr files. So these two right here, we already opened up. Now we're going to open up those other four here, and for these we don't need to look at the 2K20 ones, the matching 2K20 files. All we need to do is go into each of these, select the line that says format, delete it. Just for each one of these, just find the line that says format, delete it, and then once you're done with all of them, hit Control Shift S to save, exit out, and make sure there's 4 more files that we need to save for, so make sure you hit OK 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Okay. So now we are good to drag the player, the converted player's files into the modded folder. So let's go ahead and do that. All right. And everything looks good except it looks like we need to adjust the skin tone in the appearance info file. And that's because we are using the appearance info file from some random base player in 2K20 that very well could have different eye color, skin tone, iris size, what have you. But so we're going to go back to this completed folder, go back one more to where we're back in the place where the original PNG archives are. Open up the original one and then open up the appearance info file in there. And then Now we want to locate our, we're not going to be in this completed folder anymore with those archives because we already dragged them in the modded folder. Now we're going to find the archive in the modded folder, which is right here, PNG 4661. We've got the appearance info from 2K20 that we're going to open, and we're basically just going to look at them side by side and make sure that, well, it actually happens that the skin tone is correct. It might just be his particular face that doesn't match particularly well with one of the predefined skin tones in the game, but we can change the pit hair. It says black over here. You're just looking over here for any values that are shared between the files, or any attributes, so skin colors in both files and so on. So you see pit hair black over here, it's brown over here, so let's change that to black. And then the iris size is regular in both, so we're good there. And so that looks like that's all we can change, but we will go ahead and save it, apply those changes, and take one more look in game. It should look basically the exact same, but nevertheless, this is Derek McKee converted from 2K17.